The story begins with a kaiju emerging in the city of Yokohama, Japan, the world leader in kaiju incidents. An alert is issued, and all residents in the area are evacuated. The kaiju is easily defeated by the main elite force in kaiju defense, and they are observed by Kafka, a simple janitor. It seems like they'll have extra work today, so they prepare to head to work. The members of the 3rd Division who dealt with the kaiju are applauded by civilians. But everyone recommends staying on alert, as other smaller kaijus may be lurking nearby. Kafka Hibino, 32 years old, an experienced and professional kaiju residue cleaner. He and his team clean up the remnants of the kaiju defeated by the 3rd Division. It's a dangerous job with no recognition from the people, but it's important, and someone needs to do it. After a long day of work, Kafka returns home exhausted, the smell of dead flesh still lingering in his nose. The news on TV talks about today's incident, focusing on Captain Mina Ashiro, 27, who has already taken down hundreds of kaijus, making her a professional in her field. Mina is an old childhood friend of Kafka's. They made a promise together, one that Kafka hasn't been able to fulfill yet, and he feels really bad about it. He even tries to convince himself that his cleaning job is also very important, but it doesn't seem like enough. The next day, when Kafka goes to work, he meets the new team member, 18-year-old Rino Ichikawa. He's interested in joining the defense team. Kafka also shared this desire, but he failed several times and eventually gave up. Ichikawa is curious about Kafka's giving up, and Kafka responds that he did his best and everyone has a limit. But that doesn't convince Ichikawa. He refuses to give up, even if he dies in the process. After that, Kafka helps Ichikawa on his first day, explaining how the work should be done. Kafka is one of the best cleaners. Even though the service is horrible in the area he operates, he never refuses and always moves forward. The workday comes to an end, and the cleaning team goes ahead while Kafka stays behind to finish the report. Ichikawa is also there and thanks Kafka for his help on his first day, mentioning that the defense team has increased the age limit to 33, so there's one last chance for Kafka if he wants to try. Ichikawa noticed the sadness on Kafka's face when they talked about the subject earlier, and this touches Kafka deeply. He's very grateful for it. But in the middle of the conversation, a creature emerges from the ground and almost swallows Ichikawa. Kafka saves him just in time and tells him to run as fast as he can and issue an alert to the defense force. Ichikawa refuses to leave him alone there, but Kafka convinces him anyway. After all, he still has a dream to pursue. Kafka is alone against that monster and there's nothing he can do against it. As he's attacked, he wonders how the hell he ended up like this. He remembers his childhood, the exact moment he made his promise with Mina, when they swore they would join the defense force and exterminate all the kaijus. The two of them now compete to see who will become the coolest member of the force. Back to reality, Kafka's leg is crushed, and he's about to be devoured. But Ichikawa returns and hits the monster with a piece of iron. He has already issued the alert and came back to help his friend. After all, how could he be worthy of joining the force if he abandoned Kafka? In Kafka's mind, nothing has changed. Whether it's the test he never seems to pass, his friend he can't protect, or even his apprentice at work. Amidst the despair, Kafka screams in anguish. But at that moment, the kaiju is exterminated by several shots. The defense team has arrived. Kafka and Ichikawa are saved by the 3rd Division led by Mina. She sees Kafka but doesn't pay much attention to him and goes to examine the area with part of the team in search of other kaiju offspring. Ichikawa and Kafka are taken to the hospital. And there, Kafka realizes how Mina has become so amazing and is completely out of his reach. But then, Ichikawa thanks him and praises him, saying that he's really cool. If it weren't for Kafka, he would surely have died. Kafka has a glimpse of his past again. Ichikawa says that he should really try to join the defense team again. This makes Kafka ashamed of his quitting thoughts and gathers a little more strength to keep trying. But a strange insect appears right in front of him, saying, "I found you." The insect enters Kafka's mouth and completely transforms his body. Ichikawa opens the curtain to see what all the noise is about, and there he sees a monstrous Kafka. He had become a kaiju. An old man passing by also sees Kafka and issues a kaiju alert. Mina remembers her childhood with Kafka and the promise they made. He said he would be by her side to protect her when she needed, and back in the present, she calls him a liar. As she takes her princess bath, her phone rings. A kaiju alert has been issued, and she prepares to hunt. Meanwhile, Kafka wonders what the hell happened to him. They try to calm the situation with the old man, but end up making it worse. Kafka tries to see if the old man is okay, but his strength is so immense that when he leans on the wall, it shatters. This alerts other patients, and they decide to quickly flee the hospital. On the way, Kafka wonders what will happen from now on, how he will join the defense team now. Ichikawa thinks it's impossible. After all, now he's a kaiju. It would be the same as trying to kill himself. Kafka despairs, just when he had decided to try again. Is it really impossible for him to join the defense team? The two try to hide in a forbidden zone to avoid drawing attention, but Kafka feels something coming. A kaiju pup walks underground right below the city. Ichikawa says the defense team is already on their way, so they will take care of it. The kaiju emerges on the surface and destroys some houses. And in the rubble is a little girl's mother who cries, trying to save her from there. She begs her daughter to flee, but she is terrified of losing her mother. The little kaiju is right there, about to devour them. But before it can, Kafka appears, delivering a powerful punch right in the damn kaiju's face. The monster flies meters ahead. Kafka is really strong now, and even he is impressed with his power. He tries to help the child and her mother, but his appearance is monstrous and scares the girl. Ichikawa soon arrives there too, as does the little kaiju, who returns wanting to take another beating. Kafka tells Ichikawa to get them out of there while he takes care of this. And gathering massive energy in his fist, Kafka counts from 1 to 3 and completely smashes the enemy with a single blow that explodes it, causing a rain of tomato sauce. Kafka's appearance still scares the girl a bit, but he says he's leaving and help is on the way. But before he leaves, the little girl thanks him, and this fills Kafka's heart with emotion. He wanders in his memories again. There is still hope of fulfilling his promise. Ichikawa takes the two people to the hospital while Kafka hides from the defense team. Kafka has been nicknamed Kaiju number 8 by the defense force. His whereabouts remain a mystery, and he has been missing for 3 months. During this time, Ichikawa and Kafka completed the first part of the defense force test, and they managed to pass. Kafka is in his kaiju form outdoors without a care in the world, and Ichikawa hits him with a flying kick, asking what he's thinking. They have a discussion about Kafka having to hide his powers. In the second phase, they will be surrounded by kaiju hunters, so if something goes wrong, Kafka dies. On the day of the test, they both arrive at the parking lot, and Ichikawa finds the base of the troop very cool. They chat, but a blonde girl interrupts them, calling Kafka an old man. She is also a candidate and throws a tantrum, telling Kafka to move his car because her lucky number today is 5, and Kafka is occupying spot 55. Kafka wonders who this annoying and conceited girl is, but she gets tired of waiting and decides to move it herself. She takes off her blaze and shows her special suit, the same type of suit used by the defense team. She activates the suit's strength and lifts Kafka's car as if it were nothing, throwing it to a random spot. This piques Ichikawa's curiosity. Who is this girl, after all? Well, she's Shinomiya, candidate number 2016, basically a prodigy. She smells a peculiar scent on Kafka, and as she approaches him, she says he smells like a kaiju. Ichikawa excuses the smell, attributing it to the kaiju cleaning work. Shinomiya wonders why 2 janitors are there. Meanwhile, Kafka lifts his car upright, leaving Shinomiya astonished. She assumes he must have a special suit, as there's no other logical explanation. Introducing himself to the confident girl, Kafka's parking spot is taken by Shinomiya's butler. Intrigued by him, Shinomiya vows to outdo him in the test. As they leave, Ichikawa is furious, seeing Kafka already using his power before the test even begins. Kafka apologizes, promising not to use it again unless absolutely necessary, like with his car. The second phase, known as the most challenging, starts. In the first part, Kafka struggles to keep up with the other runners in the training race, despite daily training. The second phase comprises 2 stages. The first tests endurance, and the second tests skills. Content changes yearly, making it unpredictable. Kafka performs below average in the physical test, wondering if age is a factor. Tempted to use his power to outshine everyone, he refrains, ending up near the bottom. Shinomiya mocks him, finding it easier than expected. Kafka, humiliated, begs her to forget his name. However, Ichikawa praises Kafka for not using his power, stating it would be unfair when everyone else is exerting effort. Despite his desire to impress, Ichikawa points out that this year's candidates are exceptionally strong. In Mina's office, she reviews this year's recruits' profiles, including Kafka's photo, feeling a hint of joy despite her stoic demeanor. A soldier delivers the recruits' files, discussing top candidates like Haruchi Izumo and Aharu Furuhashi, noting their exceptional abilities. Aoi Kaguri, a rising star at FTAJ, gave up her future there to join the defense team. Most participants are elite level, with Shinomiya standing out as a prodigy in kaiju hunting, despite being just 16. Shinomiya approaches Kafka again, asserting her superiority, but Kafka's outburst is halted by his guards. Undeterred, she vows to crush him whenever she pleases and leaves. The second part of the test begins, with participants directed to a training ground where they'll face kaiju and must defeat them. They encounter Hashina, the test's proctor. Of course, nobody goes empty-handed, so Hashina provides all participants with special defense troop suits, as well as anti-kaiju weapons. The defense team's special suit is made from organic parts of kaijus and fuses with the human body, enhancing strength exponentially. Ichikawa's suit releases 8% of its power. Hashina explains that this percentage indicates how much power from the uniform a person can extract, and 8% is actually significant. A trained general typically achieves around 20% extraction, so it's a substantial amount. To everyone's surprise, Shinomiya extracts an incredible 46% from the suit, a true prodigy on par with a platoon leader. Several candidates achieve above 10%, but no one comes close to Shinomiya. Hashina mentions that 10% is already impressive, and he's never seen anyone at 0%. Until Kafka appears. Shinomiya finds Kafka increasingly irritating, having seen him lift a car earlier. Why doesn't he show that power now? Now equipped, Hashina begins the final test. Each participant will be monitored by a drone, observing their actions while hunting kaijus. If their life is in danger, the control center will activate a remote shield, but this will result in disqualification. Shinomiya naturally stands out, agile and effortlessly defeating multiple kaijus. Meanwhile, Kafka struggles to wield his weapon due to lacking the strength of the suit. When Hashina mentions that Captain Mina Ashiro herself is watching, Kafka begins to focus seriously. Analyzing the situation, Kafka realizes that the drones assess each individual's approach, meaning the test isn't just about eliminating kaijus, but also adapting to chaos. With their low offensive power, Kafka and Ichikawa decide to provide support. They aid a team fighting one of the kaijus. Kafka knows their weaknesses inside out and throws a sound grenade that ruptures the monster's eardrums, creating an opening at its vulnerable belly. Kafka alerts the attack team and they capitalize on it. Things seem to be going well for Kafka without using his power, but just when everything seems fine, he's attacked up close by another kaiju. Kafka is injured and suffers multiple fractures, and the command center team prepares to activate the remote shield. If they do so, Kafka will be disqualified. Despite giving his all to try to get up and out of the situation, nothing seems to work. The shield is about to be activated, but Kafka is saved by Shinomiya, who declares that casualties and withdrawals will not be allowed while she's on the battlefield. Although she saves him, she makes sure to showcase her arrogance before heading into the final stretch. Hashina speaks through Kafka's earpiece, informing him of his multiple fractures and recommending he withdraw for treatment, but only Kafka can make that decision. Refusing to give up, even if it seems foolish at his age, Kafka will bet everything he has to keep moving forward. Kafka suggests Ichikawa go ahead, but he refuses and decides to support Kafka until the end. Kafka seizes on this and comes up with an idea. Ichikawa carries Kafka on his back while he handles the weaponry, which Hashina finds hilarious, asking if he can approve them just for being so funny. Using all the strength of his suit, Ichikawa runs fast while Kafka handles the offense, but Shinomiya is faster. Agile and swift as a plane, she surpasses herself more and more. None of the other candidates can keep up with her. She's so far ahead that none of the others can even act as her support. She takes down all the smaller kaijus and moves on to the largest and final kaiju. She launches a grenade at it and finishes it off with a powerful shot. Yes, she's amazing despite being showy. The test ends, the drones are collected, and the injured are treated. Shinomiya exceeded expectations, basically carrying the team, as expected of director Shinomiya's daughter. Shinomiya executes everything perfectly and has a moment of reflection, remembering her father. Thinking of going back to show off to Kafka, she's surprised when another kaiju appears. This kaiju is completely different from all the others, standing the same height as Kafka. Shinomiya realizes it wasn't on the target list, and before she can react, she's shot with a single bullet that pierces her chest. The slain kaijus on the battlefield begin to rise, regenerating their lost limbs. Shinomiya is gravely wounded, falling to the ground and coughing up blood. Fortunately, she focused the suit's defense entirely on her heart to protect it, believing she's still capable of fighting. In front of her stands the strange kaiju, petting the largest one Shinomiya had just killed, calling it a good boy. No kaiju can speak, and this truly surprises Shinomiya. The enemy then says, "Chew well before swallowing." Shinomiya is hit by several more pressure shots that pierce her like styrofoam once again. In the control center, Hishona asks what the hell is happening. Why are the kaijus rising? His colleague explains that the dead kaiju's fortitude is now at 6.4. At this level, only an entire battalion can contain such a kaiju. Mina wastes no time and calls for Hashina to go to the battlefield. An alert is issued for the candidates to evacuate the area. Shinomiya can't get up, thinking it's pointless to evacuate if they don't stop that monster. Many will die. The kaiju fibers in the uniform can stem the bleeding. She can still move slowly and wishes to fight. She remembers her father saying she needed to be perfect for the nation's future. She can't let anyone die there. She needs to be perfect. But as she struggles to get up, she's hit by a violent blow from the larger kaiju, throwing her forcefully against the debris. In Shinomiya's childhood, she excelled in her studies and topped the test. Her classmates praised her. She was the best, but all the other children were congratulated by their parents and rewarded with gifts, even though their grades were slightly lower. Upon returning home, Shinomiya learns that her father is coming back today and should be pleased with her top grade. But when he arrives, he only says she's merely fulfilling her duty. This breaks her heart, but she continues to obey her father, who tells her to set new goals. Her father made it clear she had to be perfect for the nation's future and for her deceased mother. Amidst these memories of needing to be perfect at all costs, the kaiju tosses her around like a rag doll, breaking her arm, and she can no longer use her weapon. The kaiju fully regenerates and gathers energy for a crushing blow against Shinomiya. The defense team has not yet arrived, and she can't get up, so she apologizes to her father. She couldn't do it. Then Kafka appears in front of her, saying she did damn well. This catches her completely off guard. What the hell is Kafka doing here? He says that thanks to Shinomiya's persistence, the other participants were able to evacuate, so now she can leave the rest to him. Moments before, everyone is evacuated, and Kafka learns that Shinomiya is the only one holding the larger kaiju. Ichikawa searches for Kafka and sees he's already gone, heading straight for Shinomiya. He wonders if Kafka will really transform, and indeed he does. Ichikawa knows that guy doesn't hesitate in moments like these. Shinomiya sees Kafka's secret, asking if he's been a kaiju all along. Kafka pleads for her not to tell the defense team, and then the kaiju begins preparing another blow, but Kafka easily dodges it. He'll explain everything to Shinomiya later, so he asks her to relax while he handles this. In the control center, abnormal energy is detected near Hanju, the larger kaiju. They have no images due to dust and network issues, but they can see Kafka's power level, which is 9.8. Hashina hears this and says it's impossible, that it must be a system error, but if it's correct, it will go down in history as one of the greatest kaijus ever, a daikaiju. Kafka concentrates his energy and prepares his powerful punch, but this time, tentacles emerge from his leg, holding him down to contain the impact. A thruster forms on his dominant arm, his muscle mass increases, and the entire area is pressured with immense force. Kafka shatters the muscles, bones, and everything else of Hanju completely. And Shinomiya's reaction is the best of all. Kafka says, "I want to see you come back from this." Even though she wasn't injured, she could never have defeated that kaiju. Kafka reaches out his hand to Shinomiya and pulls her close, punching another kaiju approaching from behind. He's glad she's safe and even tells her she needs to prioritize her safety. Ichikawa appears, saying the same to him. While the two argue, Shinomiya faints from the overwhelming emotions. Afterward, the defense team finally arrives at the scene. No candidate was injured. Kafka, Ichikawa, and Shinomiya took refuge in one of the shelters on the field. Mina sees there are many questions in the air, such as the Kaiju's reviving. And Hashina notices it's a scene very similar to 3 months ago when Kaiju number 8 appeared. There might be a connection. Kafka and Ichikawa return to the hospital, but their injuries aren't too severe. Mina visits them after learning they protected Shinomiya and formally thanks them. Kafka tries to call her but hesitates. It's not the right time yet. He decides to talk to her only after becoming a full-fledged member of the troupe. Meanwhile, that same strange kaiju from before listens to the radio, which reports the incident at the defense base and that there were no deaths. But how is that possible? He wonders. He doesn't believe Captain Ishiro is that strong. And in the midst of it, he receives a call summoning him to finish cleaning some tracks. The strange kaiju starts writhing and transforming into a human. He returns to his team, revealing himself to be the newest member of Kafka's cleaning crew. Kafka initially showed more confidence about the test, but soon relapses, becoming desperate about the impending results. Later, the results finally arrive, and whatever they may be, it's Kafka's last chance to join the team. Meanwhile, at the defense base, Shinomiya receives congratulations from Mina Ishiro herself for passing first and for doing an excellent job in handling the exam incident. However, she doesn't like it. She didn't defeat that thing, and she thinks Kafka should be there instead of her. He not only saved her, but also showed concern for her. She is also curious about the Kaiju's form and wants to find out more about it. Before she finishes her thoughts, Kafka enters the room, apologizing for arriving like this. In the decision council of the successful candidates, Kafka was about to be failed. Mina wanted to disagree with that, but it would go against the rules. Hashina then begins to speak, mentioning that it would be normal to fail Kafka for scoring 0% in the suit extraction. But he surprised during the final stage and also provided great comic relief. With that said, he decided to take Kafka as his cadet, and he will personally train him. Kafka and Mina lock eyes again, and she is very happy inside. She starts to give an inspiring speech, stating that the Kaiju's strength is increasing more and more, and everyone needs to surpass themselves. In this, Kafka becomes very inspired and ends up thinking out loud, calling Mina by her first name. This surprises everyone, and he receives 100 push-ups as punishment. Hashina bursts out laughing again. However, when Mina passes by Hashina to leave, he sees that she smiled. Hashina didn't recruit Kafka just because he's a good comedian or because he thinks he has potential. He suspects there's something more to him. When the system indicated 9.8 of power coming from a kaiju, Kafka's vital signs were also lost. In addition to his low power, Hashina feels something strange about Kafka, so he will keep him close. 2 months later, the training of the new team begins. Ichikawa manages to increase his suit power to 18%. Shinomiya raises hers to 55%, while Kafka achieves the incredible feat of releasing 1% of suit power, and he loves it, not missing the chance to show off to Shinomiya, even though she has 53% more. Hashina remarks that at this rate, Kafka will unfortunately be dismissed in 3 months. The training continues, and everyone puts in a lot of effort. During shower time, the boys compete to see who has the biggest biceps, but they are all beaten by Kafka, if it weren't for his big belly. They start discussing why they joined the defense team, and everyone responds that it's because of Captain Ishiro. After all, she's the heroine of this generation. When they discover that Kafka is Mina's childhood friend, everyone is impressed, asking for all the details of the story. They end up spending too much time in the shower and feel dizzy. Later, Kafka realizes he needs to put in twice the effort of the others, but Hashina appears and says that sleeping is also part of the training. Kafka says he can't be fired, and Hashina already knows about his promise with Mina. He listens to every part of the base. His promise is to fight alongside Mina, and Hashina sees that he wants his position. Kafka says, "Exactly," and that annoys Hashina a bit, saying he can come for it. He gives Kafka 2 more hours, and then he'll have to turn off the lights. He leaves and advises not to get too close to the other members. In this line of work, anything can happen. Just then, the alert starts ringing. It's time for Kafka and the others' first mission. Sometime earlier, Kafka, Ichikawa, and Shinomiya were discussing Kafka being a kaiju. He even considers telling the defense team. Perhaps they can help, but Shinomiya is against it. They would conduct experiments on him, his life would be cut short. Additionally, she learned that numbered kaijus are used for experiments. Shinomiya makes it clear that if Kafka ever threatens humanity, she will terminate him herself. Kafka doesn't mind and says he's counting on her. Arriving at the scene, this new kaiju resembles a mushroom. The commander assigns troops to strategic positions and sends them into combat. Kafka needs to prove his worth and stay on the defense team. Tension, panic, pressure from all sides, but still, Kafka is excited. After all, it's the job of his dreams. They try to make this first mission a true success, and thus they head into battle. Kafka gets too excited and rushes ahead, but he's thrown back hard by a smaller kaiju. Shinomiya tells him to stay back with his 1%. They still don't know the enemy's vital points. They need to wait for the front line to provide the information. Shinomiya effortlessly takes down several smaller kaijus while trying to find the vital point. She is praised by Kafka and even hesitates at this moment, and her suit notifies her that her pulse has started racing, which embarrasses her. On the other side of the squad, Ichikawa and the others are fighting against smaller kaijus too. Ichikawa manages to take down a large kaiju by switching his explosive blasts for freezing ones, which suits his style better, but it's not enough. He wants to get stronger so Kafka doesn't have to transform. While everyone is gradually improving in combat, Kafka can't keep up. He tries to think of a way to be useful and remembers that they still don't know the kaiju's vital point. He needs to fight using his own weapons. Kafka then begins to tear apart the dead kaiju in search of a weakness. He discovers that it's a fungus-type kaiju, but the core isn't where it should be. In this, he discovers something interesting and contacts Captain Hashina. Kafka finds out where the core was hidden, near the column below the neck, but there's something more to it. Yojus also have reproductive organs. If this organ remains intact, even after the Yoju's death, new Yojus can be born. Hashina congratulates him on a job well done. In addition to work experience, his daily studies have brought drastic results, which is very good. The information is passed on to the entire troop. Mina springs into action and uses a super-strength cannon to destroy the giant kaiju. Hashina says that's the level of the person Kafka wants to become. Mina targets the giant kaiju with the third shot while thinking of Kafka and their promise. She has 96% suit extraction. The kaiju goes down with the third shot, but Mina prepares the fourth and then the fifth, even though the creature's vital signs are at 0. Kafka sees that Mina's power is truly monstrous. It's incomparable to what he saw on TV or through binoculars. Hashina appears, asking if he wants to give up already. Standing by the captain means equaling her. However, Hashina couldn't do the same as her in any way. His power released for firearms is low, so he doesn't fare well against such large threats. But for small and medium sizes, he's sensational. Unlike others, Hashina uses swords instead of firearms. Captains and vice-captains have the highest combat aptitude, so they are equipped in the most appropriate way possible. Mina eliminated the larger kaiju, but it's not over yet. The main threat is the smaller kaijus, and there was a vast number of them stored in the larger kaiju, and now that it has been taken down, they're all coming at once. Among everyone in the defense team, most reach 20 to 30% suit release at their peak. Only Shinomiya surpasses this barrier, but there's someone else with great potential, and that's Ichikawa. He's outpacing the others more and more quickly. While they fought, a strange individual regrets them, discovering the reproductive organs he implanted in the smaller kaijus, wondering if there's a kaiju interior specialist in the troop. Before that, elsewhere nearby, the cleaning team watched from a distance as the defense squad battled the kaiju. One of them asked if anyone had seen the rookie. Meanwhile, that same rookie complained about their plan being discovered before they could act. Now, unsure of what to do, they lamented the fatigue of reviving everyone. Ichikawa found it all very strange and couldn't understand why the rookie was speaking like that. He stretched his finger and began something bizarre, launching a projectile like a bullet, hitting Iharu squarely. He tried to aim for the heart, but his accuracy was poor in human form. Ichikawa attempted to aid his colleague while the enemy transformed, revealing its true form. It complained about not wanting to leave empty-handed and decided to take a member of the squad. Ichikawa tried to warn Hashina, but communication was cut off by the enemy kaiju. He managed to create an area devoid of detections and used it to hunt. He began shooting again. Rino Ichikawa managed to dodge fatal blows, but all the shots hit him, piercing the suit easily. The kaiju found it strange that he was missing so much, realizing that Rino could see. Kikoru had explained to him that Rino always made a finger movement before firing, so in theory, he just needed to focus on that and follow the trajectory. Ichikawa instructed Iharu to go for reinforcements while he distracted the monster. Despite his fear, he wanted to be a member of the squad more than anything, risking his life to protect others. Rino knows he doesn't stand a chance against that kaiju, but he can at least buy some time. Ichikawa successfully dodges the next attacks and retaliates. Meanwhile, Iharu becomes very frustrated along the way. Despite reaching 20% suit extraction much earlier than Rino, he was still overtaken by him. Despite recognizing Rino's strength, he harbors a lot of anger at losing to him. In the midst of the battle, the kaiju quickly moves towards Rino Ichikawa, surprising him with multiple arms ready to fire. There's no way he can escape, if not for Iharu, who returns and narrowly saves him. Although he ends up getting hit and refuses to be saved by Rino, now it's Rino who will be saved by him. Rino asks why he came back, and Iharu simply tells him to be quiet. Without him, Rino would be in trouble now. The enemy doesn't understand. Humans or objects can't leave the area he created without his permission. It's futile. Iharu then decides to detonate this guy next to Rino. They both devise a plan. Iharu will try to create an opening while Rino goes after the enemy. Iharu disrupts the kaiju's movements, so it decides to eliminate him first. However, now it can also predict his shots, and before the kaiju can attack again, Rino unleashes his maximum power in a single shot. In that one moment, Rino begs the heavens to make him stronger than Shinomiya and even Captain Mina, to finish off this enemy once and for all. A powerful shot is fired and hits the kaiju head-on. Or so it seems, because upon closer inspection, there's a wall of dead kaijus there. The enemy, now much larger than before, notices from their expressions that they probably don't have a plan B. Rino is targeted. Elsewhere, Captain Hashina is alerted about the loss of contact with Rino and Iharu. Kafka overhears everything. For a second, he notices one of the kaiju corpses move. Shinomiya arrives to warn Kafka, and she confirms that the enemy has returned. Rino falls to the ground, barely able to move but still determined to fight. The kaiju finds it incredibly difficult to immobilize a human without killing them. Iharu attempts to attack, but bullets won't work twice on this enemy, and he is also hit. The kaiju shoots at Rino until he can no longer get up, and Iharu is overcome with frustration, feeling helpless. Iharu begins to plead for anything to appear and save Rino, whether it be an angel or demon, anything. The kaiju deems Iharu unnecessary and decides to take him down right there. But at that moment, a furious Kafka, transformed into a kaiju, emerges right behind him. The enemy is completely taken by surprise and is struck hard by Kafka's overwhelming blow. So violent that the enemy's head flies off its body. Kafka apologizes to his friend for the delay, but Rino feels like he failed again, forcing Kafka. The adversary quickly recognizes the infamous kaiju number 8. Kafka sees that it will take a little longer, so he leaves Rino there while the suit tends to his injuries. Rino knows how strong Kafka is, but still has a bad feeling. The enemy questions why one kaiju would interfere with another kaiju. After all, Kafka is much stronger than he expected, and now he's interested in his body as well. Kafka is hit by some shots, causing damage but stopping at the armor. The enemy sees that Kafka is indeed tough, and to take him down will require much more. That's when he reveals numerous arms ready to fire projectiles. Iharu realizes that this guy was just playing with the two of them. Kafka theoretically questions what it was that the enemy shot into the bodies of his comrades. Then he starts shooting everything at once. Kafka is furious, but he doesn't move a muscle besides his jaw, stopping all the projectiles with a single roar. Everyone is astonished, including the enemy kaiju, who doesn't understand how this is possible. They clash, but in combat, Kafka is so superior that his enemy can't see his blows coming, becoming completely confused. The enemy tries to shield himself with the bodies of kaijus, but nothing works against Kafka now. The enemy can't keep distance, as Kafka punishes every move severely. Even his regeneration isn't normal. He knows he needs to retreat somehow or he'll die right there, but no opening is found. Kafka crushes him and is about to unleash his strongest blow directly into the villain's core. As he gathers all his mass and focuses everything on defense, his body is torn apart. He manages to survive, but his core is now exposed. However, when Kafka is about to finish him off, troops from the defense team appear there. Sometime earlier, Shinomiya and Kafka discuss the humanoid kaiju. If it's really him, Kafka will be able to sense his presence. He then transforms and goes after Reno and Iharu. In the present, Shinomiya hears the soldiers saying they found kaiju number 8. Returning to Kafka, he is distracted by the soldiers arriving, realizing that the enemy's barrier has broken. This gives him an opening, and he manages to escape, saying that he now understands Kafka's profile and will kill him next time. He shoots at the soldiers and Kafka protects them. One of the soldiers notices this. The enemy remarks that Kafka is too human for a kaiju. Kafka now needs to flee and hide to return to normal. When he finds an empty alley, Hashina appears behind him, saying he finally found him. He radios this and everyone hears. Hashina wastes no time and attacks Kafka with his blades. He is incredibly fast, and Kafka narrowly dodges his strikes. As he has said before, Hashina has an insane advantage against smaller kaijus, and now he is taking it seriously. Kafka finds himself backed against the wall, realizing that retaliating could result in him killing Hashina. Watching Shinomiya in action was already a spectacle, but Hashina is on a completely different level. These are the moves of a captain. Hashina's movements become increasingly faster, and that's when Kafka is struck by Hashina's empty slash, even though he was certain he dodged. Hashina sees the core. Regenerating limbs consumes a lot of energy, so Kafka can't afford to take any more hits. He uses his arms to deflect the trajectory of the blades. Hashina is giving it his all, but he realizes that the kaiju is still holding back. He senses something strange about his opponent. There's something wrong. He then assumes his fifth stance and delivers a double slashing blow. Kafka dodges, losing a leg, but Hashina follows up with the third strike that hits Kafka head-on. However, Kafka already knew where he was aiming because of the core and anticipated it, creating a jaw on his arm and grabbing Hashina's blade. Kafka then punches the captain's sword, causing him to recoil and become distracted enough for Kafka to escape. Meanwhile, Kikoru Shinomiya wonders if she can really trust Kafka. Just then, he appears exhausted and apologizes for worrying Kikoru. But being at Sundara, she doesn't admit it. Kafka is worn out and let the humanoid kaiju escape, but Kikoru is more concerned about his health at the moment. Approaching Hashina, Mina sees him looking downcast and asks if kaiju number 8 was really that strong. He mentions that she caught him at a bad time, and Mina even takes a photo to tease him. Hashina admits that kaiju number 8 must be a daikaiju. The last one of that level of strength appeared 5 years ago. An unease still surrounds Hashina. There was something wrong with that kaiju. Its movements, its fighting tactics were similar to that of a human, and it didn't seem like it wanted to harm him. Mina decides to take charge from there. For her, the only good kaiju is a dead kaiju. At that moment, one of the squad members contacts Hashina and Mina, informing them about the report on Reno and Iharu. The humanoid kaiju is the same one that appeared during the exam, and when they found him, he had a human appearance. Later, Hashina and his colleague investigate this case and ask some questions to the cleaning team they worked with. All of this is confidential, and no one knows that there's a kaiju capable of transforming into a human. His colleague wonders if this is the right decision, but they have no choice. It was a decision made by the higher-ups in the Eastern Command, and upon reading more, Hashina understands their motives. If this were revealed, it would generate great distrust among the population. The most suspicious would suffer prejudice and retaliation, and that would be much worse. Hashina finds something strange. Why is a kaiju disguised as a human registered as a civilian in the system? Meanwhile, the kaiju disguised as a human walks along a road where a man yells at him to get out of the way. He almost kills the man but decides it's better not to attract attention, and with the current situation, it would be even better to change his appearance. He then decides to devour the man and steal his appearance. The car radio mentions the defense troop distinguishing the case of the humanoid kaiju as a long-term one, and nicknames it Kaiju Number 9. Kaiju Number 9 was the last to receive a code name, and the troop is still investigating its relationship with Kaiju 8. Kafka and Kikoru are in the medical wing waiting for Ichikawa to wake up. When he does, he's overjoyed to see Kafka well and thanks him for saving him and Iharu. However, Iharu himself is also there and asks why he's thanking Kafka if it was Kaiju 8 who saved them. Shinomiya quickly says that his analysis of the mushroom kaijus was crucial. Despite being a kaiju, Iharu is impressed to see Kaiju 8 pummeling Kaiju 9. Kafka even blushes at the praise, finding it strange, but Shinomiya says he always looks like a fool. Later, everyone celebrates the team's first completed mission and Reno's return. The excitement is so high that they start discussing many things about the mission. Then, Hashina enters and makes an announcement. Kafka's discovery about the mission's kaiju was extremely helpful and highly praised. He has just been promoted to a member of the troop. Thus, Hashina welcomes the 3rd Division of the Defense Troop, this time for real. Kafka is officially inducted into the Defense Force and takes his oath before Mina. But before he leaves, Mina warns him not to count his victory yet. There's still a long way for him to fight alongside her. Kafka smiles and says they will soon fight together side by side. It was Hashina himself who recommended Kafka to be officially inducted, so Mina tells him it's best not to disappoint him. Later, Kafka studies late into the night to improve himself, then decides to leave before Hashina rushes him again. As he exits, he sees the training room light on, and upon checking, he finds Hashina training hard as well. Kafka realizes that those movements are like the ones they had in their fight when Kafka was Kaiju 8. This shakes Kafka, and he ends up falling to the ground. Hashina notices him and realizes he was studying late again. Kafka says the same, and Hashina replies that he's training to face Kaiju Number 8 so that next time, he can cut it into pieces with a single blow. Hashina says he held back initially. If he had used the 6th form instead of the 5th, he would have cut it into pieces with its core intact. Kafka is shocked to the core. Both Kaiju Number 8 and 9 are too strong for ordinary soldiers. Hashina wants to eliminate them personally. Kafka thanks him and says he'll do his best. Hashina jokes, saying he doesn't know how someone with 1% will do anything, but still, he has faith in Kafka. Meanwhile, a new humanoid kaiju appears. It is close to the Tashikawa base and is preparing to descend. Hashina reflects on the strange sensation emanating from Kaiju 8. It seemed to be a person. And now, Kaiju 9 can disguise itself as one. Meanwhile, Kafka is outside, realizing that he has finally taken the first step and truly joined the defense force. As he heads back inside to sleep again, numerous meteors suddenly rain down on the troop base. The impact is enormous, waking up others and putting Hashina on high alert as he rushes while speaking to the control center. It's reported that dozens of kaijus have emerged within the base from an aerial attack. They all have fortitude exceeding 6. They're all Hojus, and only a whole platoon can defeat each one of them. Hashina dons his special suit and orders all soldiers to be on standby, issuing an emergency alert for those off duty. He instructs them to keep the kaijus contained in the training field for as long as possible. Meanwhile, Kafka watches incredulously as the kaijus, resembling pterodactyls, swarm the base, prompting him to immediately contact Hashina. He mentions that this type of kaiju is proud and usually operates alone, but this time it's different. This means that there's someone superior to them, someone strong and intelligent enough to control them and orchestrate this plan. As Kafka speaks, Hashina comes face to face with the main villain. The new humanoid kaiju asks who the strongest one there is. Captain Mina Ashiro is out, so it ends up being Hashina himself. The kaiju then declares that he will be his prey and attacks with a flick. Hashina narrowly manages to dodge, but the blow is incredibly powerful. In the control center, the enemy's strength is measured at 8.3. He's a daikaiju like Kafka. Hashina devises a containment plan, communicating with the other soldiers. Seizing the opportunity, the kaiju appears right behind him, delivering another crushing blow. But Hashina evades, showcasing his speed. The kaiju thinks it's time to start the massacre and opens its hidden eye, which reacts with the Yojus. The kaiju unleashes another devastating blow, only for Hashina to evade once more. Its attacks resemble meteors. One blow and Hashina would be shattered. However, he's skillful and incredibly fast, landing multiple cuts on the enemy, but its resilience is absurd, even greater than Kaiju 8's. On the other side of the base, the troop deals with the Yojus, but none of their attacks have any effect. Kafka contacts his team and explains that attacking head-on is futile. The Kaijus fly, and the front side is heavily armored. The weak point is the back, where the core is located. The team devises a plan to distract them and attack from behind, but the Kaijus are cooperating, making it impossible. That's when Shinomiya appears, suggesting another approach. Attack head-on with all their strength, and so she wields a giant anti-kaiju axe. Earlier, Shinomiya receives the opportunity to have her own weapon, similar to Hashina's blades or Mina's cannon. Only captains are allowed their own weapons, but an exception was made because Kikoru is much stronger than the others, and the kaijus are becoming increasingly powerful. Kikoru's main weapon now is a large axe, just a prototype, but she complains that it doesn't suit her at all. Now the battlefield belongs to her. The kaijus can no longer do as they please. A large Hoju was taken down in Shibuya 2 years ago. The troop took its unique organ and created powerful weapons from it. The first form of this axe unleashes a shockwave from behind as propulsion for a crushing blow. The second form releases a shockwave upon impact. Reno even wonders why it doesn't suit her. The weapon perfectly embodies her aggressive and arrogant personality. Another kaiju attacks from above, but Reni protects Shinomiya. They work together as attacker and support. Meanwhile, Hashina struggles to deal with the main enemy. The kaiju is extremely strong and fast, but it's not just that. It's also enjoying this fight, and normal kaijus shouldn't feel such emotions. Hashina tries to evade the blows, and in one of them, the kaiju hits one of the gates. The captain seems to notice something curious, and the kaiju praises him. No one has ever lasted this long against him. Taking advantage of Hashina's distraction, the kaiju lands a solid hit on him. He crashes into the walls, but one of the kaiju's arms is severed, and it also receives a powerful blow from the captain. Hashina activates the full power of his suit, reaching 92% release. The battle just got even more serious. In the midst of the confrontation against the remaining kaijus, Kafka partially transforms and saves one of the troop members. He's almost hit from behind, but Kikoru saves him with Reno's help. The two of them decide to take care of the kaijus while the others assist the injured. Reno asks Kafka not to be reckless and to trust his team. He's now a member of the troop. 2 squads of veterans who were off-duty appear to help. The squads manage to overcome the kaijus little by little, even without Captain Mina. Meanwhile, Hashina warns the enemy about messing with the 3rd Division. He won't leave there alive. The captain uses his powerful slashes to target the enemy's armor weaknesses. The enemy realizes and tries to fix them. However, these slashes were just a distraction for the real attack. Hashina delivers a massive amount of blows, and the kaiju enjoys the direction of the fight even more. He's finally fighting with everything. Hashina sees that the enemy's core is much larger than he thought, so he unleashes an octuple slash, but instead of falling, the kaiju starts to transform. In the midst of the confrontation against the remaining kaijus, Kafka undergoes a partial transformation and saves one of the troop members. He narrowly avoids being hit from behind, but Kikoru saves him with Reno's assistance. The two of them decide to handle the kaijus while the others tend to the wounded. Reno urges Kafka not to be reckless and to trust his team. He's now a member of the troop. Just then, two veteran squads who were off-duty arrive to lend their aid. The squads manage to gradually overpower the kaijus, even without Captain Mina. Meanwhile, Hashina warns the enemy that they've picked a fight with the 3rd Division. They won't leave alive. The captain uses his powerful slashes to target the enemy's armor weaknesses. The enemy realizes and attempts to counter, but these slashes were merely a distraction for the real attack. Hashina unleashes a massive barrage of strikes. The kaiju seems to relish the turn of the fight, finally engaging at full strength. Hashina sees that the enemy's core is much larger than he thought and launches an octuple slash. But instead of falling, the kaiju begins to transform. The kaiju's shell begins to crack, its power seemingly increasing exponentially. Even Kafka can sense the kaiju's presence, even in his human form. The enemy continues to grow, its form becoming grotesque with multiple mouths emitting high-temperature vapor. The kaiju undergoes another transformation, gaining muscles and a much larger, stronger body with a fortitude of 9.0. This renders Hashina's combat against the enemy completely unfeasible. He cannot win alone. Nevertheless, the captain dodges the blow and begins climbing the enemy, utilizing his 3rd form to summon numerous slashes. However, the slashes are too shallow. Hashina decides to increase the speed of his slashes even further to reach the core on the creature's back. However, his nose starts bleeding, his suit having reached its maximum usage. Hashina is pushing his limits too far. He has already used the suit's full power for 10 minutes, which is a very high risk, with only 1 more minute of power remaining. The enemy summons 2 smaller kaijus, surrounding Hashina. To make matters worse, the enemy turns one of the kaijus into a living bomb, nearly exploding right in Hashina's face, but he narrowly avoids it. Taking advantage of the smoke screen, the captain maneuvers to the kaiju's back to defeat it. However, the kaiju reveals several eyes on its rear, seeing exactly where Hashina is and attacking him directly. Hashina is hit and sent flying into the wall. The suit's full power is deactivated. Hashina is now at the mercy of luck. In the past, when Hashina was still a child, he aspired to join the defense troop, but his skills excelled only in samurai blade techniques, which were only useful in the Edo period. In the present, even after a monstrous blow, Hashina rises with a smile on his face, claiming to be fine. The evacuation of civilians is nearly complete, and the battle against the kaijus is going well. Hashina fulfills his duty to the end, engaging in another combat against the main villain. He unleashes his slashes, but the enemy already knows his techniques. Since his childhood, everyone had said that his techniques were useless against kaijus. His proficiency with firearms was too low, and he would end up dead. However, when he met Mina, she said she needed his strength as a swordsman, being different from everyone else. Mina knew that powerful smaller kaijus could also appear. Moreover, Mina was very poor with blades, and he could pave the way for her in all situations. Mina entrusted this base to Hashina's care, and he will protect it to the end. The captain employs all his cutting techniques against the creature, but nothing is effective. He is caught again and his end draws nearer. Kafka is nearby, running to help while thinking of Kakoru and Ichikawa, who warned him not to be reckless. If he transforms here, there will be no escape. Considering all this, Kafka decides that a comrade's life is much more important. But before he could transform, a voice thanks everyone for holding their positions. Suddenly, the kaiju is hit squarely by a powerful cannon blast. Mina Ashiro finally arrives in the combat, activating her full power of 96%. The monster manages to regenerate and sends the smaller kaijus to attack Mina. She is informed that the core is located on the creature's back between some vertebrae. She moves while her tiger Bako supports her as she fires the cannon. The kaiju anticipates the attack and is regenerating too quickly. Hashina makes an effort for one last attack, releasing 63% of his power. He targets the legs to limit the target's mobility, but his suit is at its limit, and he is almost hit if not for Shinomiya, who arrives just in time. She saves Hashina, but her current power barely scratches the kaiju. Hashina shouts that it doesn't matter, just keep attacking. The two of them attack together and manage to break the monster's shell, but the limit is also reached for Kikoru, and she falls. The captain praises her and finishes with a double slash to finally sever the monster's leg. Hashina needs to keep cutting and prevent it from regenerating until Mina can hit the core at once. He forces his body to keep moving even with his muscles burning from exhaustion, just to create an opening for Mina. And so, the kaiju's core is finally exposed and ruthlessly obliterated by Mina, falling with a roar of death. Hashina and Mina manage to take down the kaiju with a little help from Kikoru. Kafka cries tears of emotion. This is exactly how he wanted to be since childhood. The battle is not over yet. The other Yojus brought by the villains still remain. Hashina tells Kikoru to rest while he and Mina go after the rest. But Mina scolds him, saying he has already done enough today and orders him to rest as well. Hashina eventually agrees, but as he looks up at the sky, everyone sees the kaijus transforming into giant bombs. It seems that the last roar was not a death roar but a signal. Mina immediately orders everyone to retreat and calls for more ammunition, but Hashina realizes that there may not be enough time. If those bombs drop, the entire base will be destroyed. Meanwhile, the remainder of the defeated kaiju calls for the captain, declaring it a draw. Desperation takes hold of the place. Amidst this chaos, Kafka runs at full speed. Everyone has given beyond their maximum, and now there is no other option. Hashina shouts for him to come back but wonders how he can run so fast. Someone with only 1% of power released couldn't move like that even in a dream. Kafka heads straight for a tall structure, where he apologizes to Hashina and transforms. A daikaiju of latitude 9.8 is detected. Kafka reveals his secret and shows himself to be kaiju number 8. Chapter 32. Hashina had his suspicions, but even seeing with his own eyes, it's hard to believe. He had grown attached to Kafka. Kafka prepares and focuses all his strength and energy from his muscles. Boosters emerge from his legs, and with a powerful leap, Kafka delivers a blow with all his might, surpassing his own limit drastically. The pressure around him distorts, and the creatures are lifted into the air all at once. Kafka manages to save the entire base, even startling the enemy kaiju. Kafka falls to the ground again, and Mina shouts for everyone to get down. The kaijus explode all at once. Kafka ended up shattering his limbs with this blow. He mentally apologizes to Ichikawa and Kikoru, and then Mina approaches him and points her gun. Kafka is taken into custody. Kafka is arrested, and the headquarters discuss what to do with him. Many approve of eliminating him and using him as a weapon or even a biological weapon. In response, Isao Shinomiya, the director of the defense troop and father of Kikoru, orders the 3rd Division to hand over kaiju number 8. Kafka is kept imprisoned and under 24-hour analysis. He wonders what will happen to him now. It seems like his dream has been extinguished once again. Mina appears to take Kafka to headquarters. He tries to call out to her but gives up. He understands that she can't do much. After all, she has to fulfill what is expected of her position. Outside, soldiers from the 3rd Division await to escort him. Kafka can't even look at them. He feels he betrayed everyone's trust by acting that way. But when he boards the convoy, Ichikawa calls out to him, saying she's sure he'll come back. Mina adds that when Kafka ran without hesitation and saved the base, she was surprised that he was a kaiju, but she also thought it was just like him. She is gathering all the evidence she can to prove that Kafka is human, so she can spare him from execution. They will also talk about his performance as a troop member. She makes it clear that in the 3rd Division, no one sees him as a kaiju or an enemy. Kafka is moved and calls out to his friend. He asks if he can still dream of fighting by her side, and she replies yes, she will always wait for him. Kafka is transported to the troop's naval base. Kafka is arrested, and the headquarters discuss what to do with him. Many approve of shooting him down and using him as a weapon or even a biological one. In the midst of this, the director of the defense force, Isao Shinomiya, Kikoru's father, orders the 3rd Division to deliver kaiju number 8. In the 3rd Division, Kafka is kept under constant observation. He wonders what will happen to him now. It seems his dream has been extinguished once again. Mina appears to take Kafka to headquarters. He tries to call out to her, but gives up. He understands that she can't do much. After all, she has to fulfill what is expected of her position. Outside, soldiers from the 3rd Division await him for escort duty. Kafka can't even look at them. He feels he betrayed everyone's trust by acting that way. But as he boards the convoy, Ichikawa calls out to him, saying she's sure he'll come back. Mina adds that when Kafka ran without hesitation and saved the base, she was surprised he was a kaiju, but also thought it was just like him. She's gathering all the evidence she can to prove Kafka is human so she can save him from execution. They will also speak of his performance as a troop member. She makes it clear that in the 3rd Division, no one sees him as a kaiju or an enemy. Kafka is moved and calls out to his friend. He asks if he can still dream of fighting by her side. And she responds yes, she will always wait for him. Kafka is transported to the troop's naval base. Some members of the 3rd Division were still surprised by the revelation. Mina calls them to the room, and there she talks about transferring the soldiers to another division. The 3rd Division's base was heavily damaged and became unsuitable for recruits, so this would be a temporary measure. The Daikaijus attacked in succession, first number 9, then 10, leading superiors to suspect it's a catastrophe in sequence. They need to prepare for what's coming. They will take the most promising newcomers and train them beyond the limit. Most of them enlisted precisely because of Mina, but Reno thinks he needs to get stronger. Everyone agrees and stands by his side. Reno tells Kafka to wait for him. Later, Kikoru pays a visit to her father, the director. Shinomiya formally introduces herself and pleads for Kafka's execution to be suspended. She was already saved by him, and that should be taken into consideration. He calls her foolish. Mina had already talked about it, and he ridicules her, asking if she came to tell him her failures. He shows Kafka's X-ray, showing that his heart is actually a core. He is convinced that he is not human but a kaiju, just like the one that killed his wife. Kikoru makes it clear that she still believes in him nonetheless. Heading to Kafka, he thinks about convincing everyone that he is human. He just needs to do that and he can return to the group. At that moment, Director Shinomiya himself enters the room ordering Kafka to be released. He is a Daikaiju, there of his own free will. Kafka repeatedly says he's not a kaiju but a human. But the director ignores him and shoots Kafka. He manages to defend himself by transforming his arm. So the director says that someone who can stop bullets can't be human. But Kafka remains persistent. He is not kaiju number 8. He is Kafka Hibino. Isao couldn't care less and then retrieves his special weapon made from kaiju number 2. Incredible and powerful gauntlets are worn by him and synchronized with his brain, and thus Kafka's execution begins. Kafka decides not to fully transform and prove he is human, but Isao attacks him with a powerful blow that tears Kafka's arm off. The director delivers another blow that hits Kafka squarely. The director was the strongest in the history of the troop in his time. Kafka almost fully transforms to withstand the director's blow, and he sees that he now indeed looks more like a kaiju. The two engage in an incredible fight, and Kafka decides to dodge everything until the director tires. However, his body starts reacting strangely, the same sensation he felt when he fought the other Daikaijus, a monstrous aura emanating from the director. Kaiju number 2 appeared in 1972 and almost caused the destruction of Sapporo. It had immense destructive power, just like its pride. This was the kaiju used to make the director's suit and gauntlets. This was what Kikoru was talking about before, weapons made from numbered kaijus. Kafka is hit by multiple punches. He can't dodge in time and ends up losing his legs, then taking a direct blow from Isao. Kafka is hit hard and is forced to transform completely, but something strange happens. His body starts acting on its own exactly like a kaiju. And within his mind, he can see the parasite that infected him, saying they need to kill kaijus. Kafka begins to act literally like a kaiju, an untamed beast. Kikoru realizes something is wrong. That's not Kafka. Kaiju number 8 delivers a powerful blow, but Isao dodges and sees how fast Kafka is, but he's just a beast with random strikes. Suddenly, Kafka's body twists on itself, spinning his punch without losing power, and hits Isao, who defends himself with the gauntlets. It's a suicidal attack based on the healing factor. The kaiju unleashes a barrage of powerful blows. If it weren't for the kaiju number 2 shield, the director would have died already. Isao manages to push the kaiju away with a kick, then prepares a new strike, creating great pressure in the air. He aimed directly at the core, but there was nothing there. When the director realized the core was behind him, being used to regenerate the entire kaiju's body and strike back with full force. This fighting style is totally insane. Kafka is already at his limit. The fight between the two begins to break the walls of the base, which was built to withstand a fortitude of 10. It's to be expected. Numbers 2 and 8 face off face to face. They are evenly matched. Kokoro finds this incredible, but one of Isao's colleagues finds it strange. If it was to kill Kafka, it was better to have done it while he was still human. He then puts pressure on him to test him. Kokoro is intrigued by this. It seems her father is really giving Kafka a chance, but he's also risking his own life. The strength of Kafka doubles in size, his strength increasing more and more along with his lack of control. Inside, Kafka thinks he has to stop kaiju number 8 somehow. The kaiju attacks again, almost catching Isao, who dodges and counterattacks with a double blow. But this has no effect on the monster. The director then releases a large amount of energy for a massive attack. But Kaiju 8 unleashes a powerful roar that disperses the attack. Isao is caught and thrown against the wall with force. At this rate, Kokoro's father will end up dying there. Kafka can't let that happen under any circumstances. The kaiju throws Isao around while Kafka tries to regain control of that thing. But it seems all his efforts are in vain, and he is increasingly engulfed by the monster. Amidst all this, amidst all the promises and people he swore to protect, everyone trusts him, especially Mina, his closest friend. In that moment, Kafka gives his all to break free from his shackles, to prove that he did not become a monster. Thus, he uses all his willpower to deflect the kaiju's final blow onto himself, hitting his chest. He then says he is not kaiju number 8. He is Kafka Hibino. Afterwards, Kafka finally collapses, and his kaiju form dissipates. The director then asks Narumi to lower his weapon, which was ready to strike Kafka. Narumi is the captain of the 1st Division of the Defense Force. When he learned that the director did not request support, he thought Isao was seeking death. Indeed, the power of number 8 went well beyond his expectations. Thus, he asks the medical team to take care of Kafka when possible. He decided that kaiju number 8 would become part of the troop without becoming a weapon. Some council members are against this, but the director argues that there are no guarantees that the strength will remain the same after kaiju 8 becomes a weapon. Furthermore, he may not be compatible with anyone, just like number 6. The great catastrophe of kaiju number 6 swept away 200 members and 3 captains of the defense force, along with Isao's wife. Daikaijus are appearing more and more, and very few members are capable of dealing with them. Less than 30 are capable of handling Daikaijus, less than 10 can handle them solo, and even fewer can handle numbered kaijus. The troop can no longer handle mass catastrophes. The country would be easily destroyed. The overwhelming power of kaiju number may 8 be humanity's hope. Even under these conditions, the council is not in favor. Elsewhere, Kafka rested in a special capsule, remembering his old memories. Later, he finally wakes up, and their Isao watches over him. He realizes that he survived in the end and is immensely grateful that Isao is also alive. He could never look at Kokoro if something had happened. Perhaps now Isao sees him as human. But getting straight to the point, if Kafka had a heart, he could not have survived this, so in a way he is indeed a kaiju. However, it has not yet been decided what to do with him. Most of the council is against letting him live, so he will have to prove that he can be useful. Kafka still considers himself a member of the troop and vows to make Isao think the same. Meanwhile, kaiju number 9 somehow managed to enhance itself, leaving a husk behind. It's time to reclaim the power of the kaijus that humans stole.